Welcome, everybody, to the NHL Fan Show. I'm Brandon Cassidy, of course, joined by Thomas West, my co-host. What a great show we have in store for you today.
The following is a presentation of the Fan Media Network.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, looking forward to talking about the North Division, and there's some interesting matchups here. Obviously, we're in Canada, so we've been following these teams very closely, but looking forward to getting into it.
For sure. I mean, especially living in Toronto, I mean, a lot of the media around here seems to cover the Toronto Maple Leafs. And speaking of the Leafs, they take on the Montreal Canadiens. The Canadiens take the last playoff spot. Thomas, I know as a Montreal fan, you've got to be pleased about that. Toffoli having a monster season with 28 goals. It's got to be exciting to see Toffoli, Gallagher, Price is back as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that Montreal's in the playoffs, but I really thought they had a good chance at the end to take the 3 spot, and then they would have been playing Edmonton, which would have been a very, very good matchup for the Montreal Canadiens because they're the only team in the North that's actually been able to shut down Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But the 7-game losing streak did come to an end for the Winnipeg Jets, so they were able to take the 3 spot. The Habs slot into a much worse matchup against the Leafs. The Habs they've been an exciting team to watch at times this year, but it's also been quite a bit of a letdown, especially considering they were off to such a hot start.
Yeah, I mean, it's been one of those seasons for the Montreal Canadiens. I'm sure that they would have wished for at least for a better start. And I mean, like I said, though, Toffoli's had a great season. CAREY is a playoff player. He is somebody who can make a massive difference in the playoffs. So we'll be sure to keep a sharp eye on them. The Puck Chiller giveaway is still on, ladies and gentlemen. It is on until May 22nd. So please give us a shout out on Instagram. Follow us at a particular graphic popped up there, and let us know what you think there. But Thomas, let's jump right in here. Lots of stuff to cover today, so let's jump right in. Toronto versus Montreal. Toronto, of course, first place in the North, and by all means, deservedly so.
Yeah, they were the best team in the North Division for sure. If they don't come out of the North Division and start playing some American teams, that's going to be a massive upset. I believe they have the second best odds right now to win the Stanley Cup, coming from a division that wasn't particularly good. So you add those two things together and it equals Toronto should definitely be making their way to the Stanley Cup final. If not, I think that's a disappointment for Leafs fans. But first, yeah, they have to get past the Habs. And
yeah, I mean, like you said, it's actually a very good point. It would be upsetting, I think, for most of Canada and NHL fans abroad. I know that there's some Australian NHL fans as well. There's a bunch of NHL fans around the world. But it would be upsetting to see the Leafs, a team of this much talent, this much caliber, not making it through to at least into the second round, if not further deeper into the playoffs. It would be upsetting. Any key players that we should be watching out for in the Maple Leafs? I mean, Auston Matthews has got to be one.
Auston Matthews doesn't have to play better than he's been playing all season. As long as he's Auston Matthews, or maybe even a little bit less than Auston Matthews, that's going to be too much for the Habs right off the bat, because the star power of the Leafs is really important. Mitch Marner has been really good, not necessarily on the goal scoring front, but he'll be the guy who sets up Matthews most of the time. So he's a guy to watch out for as well. But I think the biggest, I don't know if this is a question mark, but the biggest X factor, let's say, for the Leafs is the goaltending battle. And this isn't confirmed yet, but I'm almost positive that it's going to be Jack Campbell starting game 1. And it'll be Jack Campbell until he plays poorly. But if he does play badly, sure, they have Anderson there to help out Campbell. But everyone's going to be so nervous about Anderson coming in, a guy who's played 1 game in the regular season after the injury. So that's some nervous times for Leafs fans.
I mean, this is somebody who came in and started setting records right away. So, I mean, he's got talent. He can stop pucks. This is not a negotiation. He's got the talent to make a massive impact for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And this has been an area for the Leafs in years prior that has cost them, especially in the playoffs. This has been an issue. They've had the teams. They just had a floundering bad time in net at some points, or a bad game, or a bad series, or unfavorable matchups, we'll say. I mean, this is that's the beauty of the Stanley Cup. It is an all-round thing that you have to have the whole package. Montreal has got quite a few key players. I mean, Toffoli, as we've been mentioning, monster season. Gallagher is back. That's going to be a huge addition for the Montreal forwards.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to pick who's going to be the guy for Montreal, but I think that might be their strong suit as well. They have a lot of people who are not necessarily star players, but they could step up. Yeah, Josh Anderson, he's been the guy, the go-to guy for scoring goals other than Tyler Toffoli, who's another guy who needs to play really well. He's going to be a big factor. If Tyler Toffoli doesn't show up, the Habs don't have a hope. They don't have a hope of winning a game.
Well, I mean, but one of the I think brighter spots right now is the fact that Carey Price, playoff Price, is coming back. I mean, he was seen in practice. We don't know if he's going to be playing. As we were speaking before this recording, we don't know if he's going to be fully on playing and back to his old form. But he's going to be a key contributing factor should the Habs make a good run against the Leafs, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, everyone talks about playoff Price, right? But when was the last time we saw playoff Price for the Habs? Like that's been something that's gone for a while. So whether that is a thing or not, I'm not sure. The Habs need it to be a thing. It still might be Anderson it still might be Allen, I should say, starting the series for the Montreal Canadiens. Carey Price, if he can step in and be really good, that's great. Allen he's been pretty good for the Habs, like good enough to win games, not good enough to win games in the playoffs against the Leafs.
I mean, and that's one of of course, that's who they're playing, and you kind of have to win games against the Leafs if you're going to move on in the playoffs. I mean, like we were talking about, though, goaltending being such a huge thing in the playoffs, moving on to the next series here, we have to talk goaltending when it comes between the Edmonton Oilers and the Winnipeg Jets. I know this is going a bit out of order, but I mean, you've got Hellebuck and you've got Smithers. I mean, these are two netminders who know how to stop pucks. Smith is a big body in net. The guy is a wall when he's on.
Yeah, he is. And he has the ability to, I don't know, steal series, but he has the ability to be really good and make really impressive saves. The problem has kind of been consistency, I think, this year for Mike Smith. He'll make the really difficult saves, the spectacular cross-crease saves, but those aren't really the saves that he needs to be making. If you don't make that crazy glove save to stop a sure goal, that's fine. You give up sure goals. But it's the ones that get through him that really knock down a team, I think.
I think one of the biggest saving graces, though, when it comes to Mike Smith and the Edmonton Oilers in net, though, is their top six. You can let a couple of bad goals in because you know your forwards are going to make up to 3 or 4 goals for instead of that one bad goal against. So it kind of have to even out somehow.
Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl round out probably the best two centers, well, in their division for sure, questionably in the league. Connor McDavid, 105 points this year. That's video game numbers.
It is. It really is. I mean, but looking at it from the talent standpoint, the Edmonton Oilers do have what it takes to get past the Winnipeg Jets. Some might even say that they're favored. But I would never count out Winnipeg. This is a rough and tough team. The rough and tough stuff usually can stop the talent. I mean, the talent can dilly-dally all they want, but if they get crunched, they're going to get afraid to touch the puck sometimes.
Yeah, and that would be in reference to Connor Hellebuck as well on the other side for the Winnipeg Jets. That's a guy who won the Vezina Trophy this year, and he's continued it this year. He hasn't got worse. That wasn't a fluke. Connor Hellebuck is a very good goalie, and they have the edge in the goaltending matchup. That's one thing that we can agree on there. If Connor Hellebuck can shut down Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid and their line mates as well, because Connor McDavid dished out a lot of assists this year. That's where I think over 70 of his points came from. So he has a supporting cast, but it's a funny matchup you talk about, right? The top 6 of Edmonton, way stronger. You look at the bottom 6 though. I look at a guy like Adam Lowry, who will center the third and fourth lines. That's one of the most underrated third line centers in the entire league. He can win draws. he can score goals, and he can grind out lines like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, which is exactly what they need to do.
Well, like you said, the Habs actually had a great time against Edmonton in terms of shutting down Connor McDavid. And I think one of the best ways that they did that was they just literally shut them down physically. They were able to keep them to the outside, away from the points. And they were able to actually make that impact that I think the Winnipeg Jets are going to have to take a note from the Habs playbook here. So let's move on. Let's move into the kind of the team versus boards. Let's talk specialty teams between these four. Starting off with Montreal and Toronto. I have to give this upper hand to Toronto.
Yeah, in the specialty teams battle, though, Toronto's power play hasn't been great this year. But they have had a good penalty kill. Montreal, they don't have a lot of firepower coming at them offensively. It shouldn't be too difficult for Toronto to shut them down in that department.
No, and I mean one of the biggest things when it comes to the playoff numbers is it's a whole new game, right? Like the regular season gives us a good starting point to kind of guesstimate from. We've seen teams coming from absolutely out of nowhere and actually end up winning the whole thing, and no one really saw it coming. So I mean, giving it to the Maple Leafs, you kind of have to at this point, especially with the lack of offensive production from the Canadians throughout the regular season. But moving into the Edmonton Oilers and Winnipeg Jets, obviously Edmonton has a lot more points this season.
Yeah, they do. I wanted to say one thing as well about the Edmonton Oilers. If you are thinking that it's going to be a runaway for Edmonton, think as well, Edmonton won a lot of games in overtime this year, which I don't think that necessarily is a bad thing. But you look at Montreal, for example, right? They've lost 11 games in overtime this year.
Right.
In 3-on-3 overtime this year, which isn't a thing in the playoffs. And you look at the Edmonton Oilers, who have won almost all of their games in overtime because they have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl playing in overtime together, right?
Right.
That's really hard to shut down.
Well, I mean, looking at the stats, though, I mean, the Edmonton Oilers only had a 27-point-something percentage power play. Not a great stat considering the fact that, you know, the Winnipeg Jets had a 23%. So this is almost anybody's game in terms of the specialty teams.
Yeah, and people say that teams will show up in the playoffs and those numbers, you know, it doesn't matter until you get to the playoffs. But let's just look right now. We'll pretend that's the case. Let's just look right now at the talent that they have on the top end. Winnipeg has some guys. Obviously, Mark Scheifele is going to be a big player for them. Blake Wheeler as well. He can put the puck on the net on the power play. Scheifele kind of has that. He's got that one-timer that'll they'll try and set him up on every time on the power play. So Edmonton's got to be careful of that.
Right.
But I mean, Connor McDavid on the power play, he's deadly. And I think Leon Draisaitl is actually probably more deadly on the power play as well if he's got the shot, and McDavid is a speed guy.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good toss-up. I think that, honestly, if you were looking for a great playoff matchup, you really couldn't have asked for a better matchup. I mean, the classic Montreal versus Toronto, obviously the classic 6 rivalry. So looking forward to that. They haven't played since the 70s against one another or something like crazy like that. And then if you look at Edmonton versus Winnipeg, another exciting matchup. This is going to be a great North Division playoff run. Prediction time. Thomas, who do you have between the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Okay, so Montreal, Toronto, I don't think that Montreal has a chance. They might win a game. So I'll give Leafs in 5 games.
Yeah, I have the Leafs in 5 as well. I don't think that they're going to sweep the Canadiens, but I think that they're going to take the series for sure. And Winnipeg versus Edmonton.
Yeah, I think we have different opinions on this one, but I think we're only battling about who's going to win Game 7. So I think this game's going to go 7. But I'm open to the possibility of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Mike Smith playing really well, and they blow past them in 4 games. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that this is going to be a 7-game series, and I'll go Edmonton in 7.
Yeah, I'll go Winnipeg. I think Scheifele's going to have a great series against Smithers, and it's going to be an exciting matchup. Again, this has been absolutely fantastic, Thomas. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. Reach out to us if you haven't already at the email down below, and we'll be sure to see you guys in the next playoff special.
To host a fan show or appear as a fan on a fan show, simply create a profile on Fan Media's iOS app or website. Select your teams and make a short intro video on your phone. Show hosts, reporters, former players, and superfans can use our Get Verified feature and make an intro video as well, and our mobile newsroom staff will reach out.